Sure. Yeah. Okay, if I don't mention it in my thing, just take it up and like because we, yeah, it's a share. It's all both of us. But the first thing I did when I stood up was said, I'm patient. Well, I said, amend the amendment. Ooh, and everyone's like, what? Oh yeah. You know, but it was like all I wanted to do was like add and First Nations, and send everyone into a bit of a tizzy, and then we collected ourselves. I think we voted in the same place twice. And then they adopted it. Got support from guys from the interior. And two Indigenous guys supporting it. At one point they said, people losing up your trees and things.
Oh, really?
And there was this chilling in the room. It was like you could tell the momentum sort of like drifted to the car. I'm the resolution. In the end, it's not the same. Oh, yeah. Keeping it forward. So that was great. I had those First Nations, but I didn't know that. Thanks. Hello. Have something to say? Turn off the cell phone.
This stuff that people just use to like set the racetrack. And this, like,
well, Sunday being
it's really interesting. First Jesse's had 2 hour break. But not stress.
Hi everyone, we're going to get started very quickly. Just a reminder to turn off your cell phones. Thanks so much. Welcome everyone to an evening of 3 committee meetings. We'll have community planning, public works and protective services, and environment and natural spaces. And I would like to begin by acknowledging that we are on the traditional territory of the Coast Salish people, and in particular our near neighbors, the Chiana First Nation and also the South First Nation. I also want to note that this is National Volunteer Week, and I just, the theme of the 2023 National Volunteer Week is volunteering weaves us together. And clearly this very much speaks to what volunteers in Metchosin do, and from volunteers in the arts and on our grounds, supporting our seniors, providing us with places to meet and learn, and to advocating for watersheds, agriculture, parks and trails, and to picking up and picking invasive species. Just there are dozens and dozens of people that probably put in thousands of hours each year supporting Metchosin. So thank you, volunteers, very much. And so with that, I would like to call to order the community planning meeting of Monday, April 17th. And to begin with, are there any additions or comments on the agenda committee? Hearing none, can I have a motion to approve the agenda? Mayor Little and seconded by Councillor Donaldson. No discussion, and call the question. All in favor? Thank you very much. And we don't have any presentations. Public participation for the community planning meeting. The one thing I would just say is that we have opportunities with the other meetings as well. So protective services and environment, both will have their own public participation. And Mr. Starr, I might call on you after if you want to speak to your rezoning. Yeah, sure. How about that? So, public participation.
Hi.
Please say your name and where street you live on.
Beth Bacon, Metchosin resident, and I wrote 3 things for 3 meetings, and I'm sorry, it's just the mood I'm in. I get progressively more goofy. So Yeah, I hope you'll take it that I'm sincere in what I say, even if I make some silly comments. So this is apropos of the APRM submission on farmland. And I'd like to start by saying our population is aging and declining. We need more people for our workforce. And I believe that all healthy women of childbearing age should be obliged to have children. I'm just kidding, but maybe you can see, maybe you can see the connection. And I'm speaking as a farmer who lives on APRM, or on agricultural land. Okay, so I'm speaking against most of what APRM is advocating with respect to putting restrictions on privately owned land that happens to be in an agricultural land reserve. The owners have the right to farm. They do not have the obligation to farm. Property owners have a right to maximize the value of their investment. They do not have an obligation to keep the value low for some future purchaser. We don't expect that of anyone else. And you don't have to make notes because I'm going to give you a hard copy. We don't expect that of anybody else. If someone who owns a rural property wants to farm the front, the back, or the middle of their property, that is at their sole discretion. If someone who owns a rural property wants to build their house at the front, the back, or in the middle of their property, that is at their sole discretion. APRM seems to take the position that farmland is a public asset when they say Metchosin lost access to 13 acres of productive farmland in the last 12 months. Again, we are talking about private property. Where does this sense of entitlement come from? I agree that we don't want monster houses in Metchosin. We need to encourage all landowners to have a small footprint on their property. In my opinion, the following is what we should expect of all landowners in Metchosin. There's 13 points. To build according to the contours of the land. To cut down the fewest number of trees. To have permeable driveways. To not use pesticides or herbicides. To plant hedgerows with native species. To avoid blasting. To avoid soil removal. To avoid unnecessary soil deposit. To plant gardens that are friendly to birds and bees, to protect and enhance wetlands, to be conservative in water usage, to garden and farm without tilling the soil, to cooperate with having a dark night sky. And I believe that these things pertain to all of us. I strongly oppose the notion that privately owned farmland is a public asset that needs stringent intervention. I do think ALR land, whether the current owner farms it or not, should be kept environmentally friendly and suitable for the next owner to farm if they so choose. If all landowners follow the 13 expectations that I have listed, no problem. Thank you.
Thanks, Beth.
I knew you couldn't write it fast.
Is there anyone else for public participation for community planning? Okay, I will ask going once, twice.
Other than me, right?
Yeah. Your attention. Okay, thanks very much. We'll move on to agenda item number 4, the adoption of the minutes. And committee, we have seen these minutes before, so we're just moving adoption. Any comments or concerns with them? Sorry, I will say community planning meeting for March 13th.
Move adoption.
Moved by Councillor Epp and seconded by Mayor Little. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? Thank you, that passes. The special community planning meeting of March 23rd. Anyone to move adoption? Mayor Little? Councillor Epp will second. Any discussion at all? Hearing no discussion, I will call the question. All in favor of adoption? Thank you very much. We have no other minutes and no business arising, and we will go to the councillor's update. And a few things on the update. So I think as everyone has probably heard, everyone in this room anyways, the provincial government announced additional elements of its housing strategy, and of significance to Metchosin is the forthcoming legislation that will lift restrictions on small-scale multi-unit homes in areas that have been zoned for single-family homes. So legislation will also be introduced to allow for secondary suites anywhere in the province. We are working to learn more about these changes and engage with both government officials and other local government leaders, and we have an opportunity to do that this weekend. Several of us who are at the Vancouver Island and Coastal Communities Conference. So understanding that there are a range of community views on housing matters, it is important to recognize the inherent limitations to growth in Metchosin. So we're not served by sewers, and not all of us are on city water. In fact, a great deal of us are on well water. And as we've seen over the years, anybody with a well probably knows that there's a risk of your well running dry increasingly. So with that committee, I would like to ask for some discussion on how to best engage decision makers. And the one thing I feel that we should be able to express our views about, again, some of the inherent limitations that Metchosin has in terms of development. And again, recognizing that there are probably diverse views on the need for more housing and how it could be done. Any thoughts, Councillor?
Are you suggesting, Councillor, that maybe we have an open house for a discussion with the public?
That's an idea. I'm not really suggesting that, but the obvious one, of course, is to think about writing the province and advising them on some of the concerns we have about what seems to be foreseen is the potential of a change in legislation that would allow for blanket application of small-scale multi-unit homes in areas where right now it is currently zoned for single-family units. And again, doing that in sort of a mass way that doesn't take into account infrastructure limitations, that does give me some concern. So, Mary Lou, and then Councillor.
Yeah, so as you know, I had some discussions with Jen Ford, the president of UBCM, at the meeting that we were at. And I said that these new regulations of the province create great trepidation in me because of our rural landscape and because, according to the Local Government Act, our OCP provides a framework for us to, for the communities to align their servicing needs with future development. And as well, so we've got the OCP, which clearly defines what we want to do in terms of protection of our agricultural lands and our natural resources. Compounded on that, we have bought into the regional growth strategy, right? And so within the regional growth strategy, they talk about regional sustainability, and they also talk about the protection of the rural sensibilities and the systems. So we've got the OCP and the regional growth framework that we're working under, and this really does contravene, and it seems like a heavy-handed approach, and it takes away some of the levers that local governments have, and so that's why it causes me great trepidation and concern. So I would rather us be proactive and to write to the province ahead of time rather than wait till September when the guidelines are brought down, when the rules and regulations are brought down. And even in the AVICC late resolution on Homes for People action, they note that allowing development in underserviced areas is effectively a catalyst for sprawl. Which many local governments have been working diligently to prevent. And so there's more more concerned than just Metchosin. There's many rural communities that this doesn't apply to, and they may be talking about the Big Ten. They may be talking about the Tri-Cities, Burnaby, Richmond, Delta, Victoria, Vancouver, maybe Kelowna. I don't know. They just really haven't come down with any specifics, but I'd rather us as a rural community to be proactive and state all of those.
So thank you, Mayor Little. It sounds like you're suggesting we write to the province and
Yeah.
state our views.
And perhaps have a meeting with Minister Kellogg.
Good point. Councillor.
Yeah, well, considering the regional growth strategy is developed with the CRD, so I believe that it's important for the CRD to move to the province as a group and find out exactly what the parameters of this new idea is, because it's very, in the report that the urban or the regional growth strategy report that you've got in your package, it's very definite about the urban containment boundary and those inside and those outside, and but I feel that the CRD would probably have the most power to actually get some answers from the province about what the various communities are supposed to do.
Okay, great. So, sorry, your idea, and this is what I was asking for, is it to work through the CRD and not do anything on our own, or?
That would be my first choice. Okay. We have Mayor Little and representatives going to the CRD, so I think that's where the pressure should start with.
Okay, great. Councillor Donaldson, Councillor Gray, any thoughts?
Yeah, I agree with what Councillor F is suggesting, that if our mayor can craft a powerful letter as she's just expressed in the wording. This is one of the things I think we all heard when we were campaigning, is the risk of losing our rural designation. And the RGS does explain why and how we actually got that. So that's a serious concern amongst our residents throughout the whole community. So definitely we need to express from grassroots at this table and start going up through the CRD, who did outline what was in the RGS and what our designation is, and try to secure that.
Great. Oh, Councillor Gray, before Mayor Little, one more time.
Yeah, I like the ideas that we're getting here. The CRD sounds like a sensible place, but I think being in touch with the province, either through letters, but also I think we should talk to our MLA. I would imagine that Minister Dean knows a little bit about what's going on. I guess what I'm interested though is not to be too feisty about this. In other words, we want to learn what's going on and be part of the policy development rather than starting off with a fighting stance, I would think. And we have, at our back, we've got the climate emergency, the biodiversity crisis. These are issues of why we want to preserve Metchosin the way it is. It fits well with the regional growth strategy, the urban containment boundary at the CRD that we're part of, the transit planning that's going on, the healthy communities, the idea that we have this wonderful place for people to come to from the cities. There's all kinds of reasons why we could put forward a good argument, but I'd like it, in terms of tone, I'd like it to be positive about it, because I'm not sure that the province has actually got us on the cutting block here or whatever. So I don't want to jump in front of it as if it's a terrible thing, but rather approach it from the point of view of all the attributes that we have, the positive circumstance that we don't want to see, as Councillor Donaldson mentioned, urban sprawl. We're against urban sprawl. In a climate circumstance, we've got to be against that. So I can see ways that we can write some nice a letter, if we send a letter to the minister, that we could engage with Minister Dean, and then work through the CRD for sure.
You don't mind, Mayor Little, just before you go. My own thought would be is that we develop our own position in a letter to government first, and then attempt to work through the CRD. And my only concern about going first to the CRD and working with them is that there's a mix of views in the CRD, but I think many of the views are pro increase in housing availability, which I just feel, just because of the significance of the issue in the urban areas, we're just going to get lost in. So I think we should begin by crafting and developing a position and I think it's a great point that Councillor Gray makes, is we don't have to come out fighting. We can just explain where we're coming from in terms of the values that we're trying to protect, not just for Metchosinites, but also for the larger region as well. So, and even in, and pointing out like the fact that we're outside of the urban containment boundary in the CRD, and that's been a long-standing sort of geographic or demographic sort of marker in terms of the CRD. I think that's important as well. So I just go to Mayor Lip.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I agree. I didn't suggest we have a feisty letter. I just think it's better that we be proactive. And going back to our letters that were requested at the very beginning of our term, it was me who said, you know, I think we should do this in a very respectful way. So I think, of course, respectful, non-feisty, but I think it's better to be proactive. I also think it's a good idea that we advocate at the CRD board. Section 1.2 of the regional growth strategy from the CRD is protecting the integrity of rural communities. And so they already know about it. The past CRD board has bought into that. All of the 13 municipalities have all agreed to that, as well as agreed to a climate action plan to protect biodiversity. But the reality is that there's ourselves, North Saanich, and Central Saanich, and the islands, yeah, that's right. So we're a little bit outnumbered, but with this new spirit of collaboration and cooperation, we recognize what Langford brings to the table in terms of increasing density, and they recognize what we bring to the table in terms of our regional plan. And so I think working through both is a good idea. The CRD will take longer, I will admit, though.
Yeah, yeah, I bet. Could I have a motion perhaps to direct staff to develop a letter for probably Mayor Little's signature, and we'll go from there?
I'll move that council write a letter to the Minister, Ravi Kalan, about our concerns regarding the new guidelines and our interest in working with the province and expressing our concerns and laid out in a very respectful manner.
Great. Seconder for that is Councillor Donaldson. And discussion. Councillor Craig.
I just want to raise one other point that I think is material here. Amalgamation is in the air again. So we see that, I guess it's Saanich and Victoria are putting together a Citizens Council to talk about, Citizens Assembly to talk about that issue. And then I saw in Capital Daily a poll showing a tremendous support of their people who responded to the poll for amalgamation of all the CRD districts. So we want to be aware of that as well. I'm not necessarily to be in the letter here, but just in that we be aware that there's other businesses going on. Now, being debt-free, of course, helps us in that. Being who we are, without sewers and without pipe water everywhere helps us with that. Regional growth strategy, all those different things. But it's another part of the puzzle.
Excellent point. Anyone else to comment on the motion? Hearing none, I will call the question. All in favor of writing the letter and further discussion with Minister Calvin? Yeah. And one other, I think it would be appropriate to do another motion that would explore other avenues to both communicate and learn about, and learn of this issue. And we talked about engaging the CRD, probably talking with Highlands, North Saanich, Central Saanich. Quick motion on that, if we could. Do we think?
So you suggesting a letter to the other?
No, not so much a letter that we, but we explore other opportunities to stay informed, be active in a respectful way on this matter. Engaging the CRD, for example. Maybe we don't need a motion on that, but.
If you'd like a motion, I'll declare a motion. So with that, I'll make a motion that Council reaches out informally to our neighboring communities that are of rural nature, and that we reach out to our MLA, which I've already done, but I will follow up on that again. Anybody else that you would like to include in
CRD.
that, and the CRD as well.
Okay. Do I have a seconder for that? Councillor Donaldson. And discussion. Hearing no discussion, call the question. Those in favor? And opposed? None? Thank you very much. Carried. We have a lot on the agenda, so let's keep moving down. Okay. Short-term vacation rentals. This is something that came up during the election campaign, but kind of more significantly, it is an issue that local governments around the world, like Barcelona, London, Louisiana, Austin, they're all grappling with short-term vacation rentals. Some of the impacts, loss of neighborhood character, where short-term vacation rentals are replete, loss of rental stock, and disruption of communities because of people coming in, and doesn't matter if it's Wednesday and you need to go to bed and wake up the next day. If it's Wednesday and you're on holidays, it's a Friday essentially. So again, neighborhood disruption. Now we have an estimated 50 short-term vacation rentals in Metchosin. There have been, I've been here in council chambers when residents have brought concerns in. I haven't heard it in this term yet, but we've certainly, I think, those of us on council have heard individual comments about short-term vacation rentals. What I would like to look at is having a closer look at short-term vacation rentals later this fall. And so I just wanted to put it on the agenda right now as sort of a heads up for everyone to be attentive to what's going on in their neighborhoods, and to be prepared to come back in the fall to talk about this. I'm certainly not one who wants to throw that we ban them immediately, but I think from what I've heard that there are some concerns. One of the interesting elements of all of this is the fees that are paid for short-term vacation rentals, which operate as a business. And right now my understanding is they only pay $35 a year. That's what they're required to pay. There are jurisdictions around the world who have bumped that business fee up to $500 a year. And you think about what something like that could mean to Metchosin in terms of revenue generation when you have 50. That's not insignificant, especially when $35,000 and an increase in our spending equals essentially a 1% tax increase. So it's something to look at for sure. And there are units out there where even $500 for a business fee, that's 2 nights stay for somebody, so for a guest. So no action indicated at this time, but I think it is an issue that I'd like to explore later this fall. So great, thanks very much. Okay, the Bufferland Stormwater Detention Ponds, the Section 219 covenant that was raised publicly in December last year. There have been a number of comments and concerns raised about this, and of course the detention ponds would serve the Central Mountain residential development if they so chose to put them there, but they are entitled or allowed to explore the location of those ponds in the bufferland. So again, we've had a lot of concern. I can tell people here that there is a report that's being developed. It's with staff right now, and I'm hoping that at the next meeting that we'll be able to provide it for the public. And again, it gets to the question of what are our obligations under the covenant, what are the developer's obligations, is it a legitimate document in terms of being enforceable on both parties, on both sides. So more to come on that. However, I do want to move ahead with something that we talked about in January 16th. And this is a referral policy that would be in place if there's major stormwater infrastructure that was planned for Metchosin, whether it's to be used for Metchosin residences or not. We talked about this in January. I think there was support from council to move ahead and develop a policy, at least for consideration. And what I've got here is a draft policy, and I would seek your comments on this. And what we would do with the comments is provide those to staff at this time, and they would come back with what hopefully might be a final policy. And it's really simple. It basically says that if there's major stormwater infrastructure to be located in the district that MEASC and PTASC have the opportunity to review and provide comment to district staff before there's approval. And so the second element defines major stormwater infrastructure. And then an element number 3, and I thank Councillor Gray for this, is what the advisory groups may look at. And then item number 4 is just to sort of rein in and give some focus and clarity as to what the policy may or may not actually cover. So any comments from the committee on this? Councillor Gray.
Thanks, Councillor Shukin. When I read this again, I realized that the list of 3A through F, these are the sort of things maybe that the advisory committee itself might recommend. Hey, we've got this plan. Would you please minimize the cutting of trees? We've got a plan, maximize the absorption of water into the ground. So I kind of was thinking about this a bit more, wondering maybe this is the advice from the committee. And our interest would be then for them to help us identify, for example, in the buffer land, if something happens there, the environmentally sensitive features, like actually go out and identify them. The work of the committee might be more, not so much advising on these things then, but thinking about, what locations are more sensitive than others, that sort of thing. Because maybe these are exactly the things we'd like to see a management plan address, and maybe we want to ask for a stormwater management plan to address these things before having a look at it. And then the committee's work might be then to, yeah, that works. There's an area here we should save. This one maybe not as important, or however that might work.
Are you
I'm not totally sure here.
Okay. Are you suggesting an amendment to the policy or a change to what the draft is?
Yeah, what I wasn't sure of was fresh looking at it, fresh eyes from when we were working on it earlier. We've got here, may look at matters such as how to do these things. Well, maybe that's going to be the job of the person who's put forward the plan. Yeah. And what we might be doing is demanding or requiring or asking, wouldn't we look at these kinds of things? And then the committee, at least on the MEASC wing, might then be part of assisting. I'm looking at B particularly, minimize impacts to environmentally sensitive features. I'm not sure if that's helpful. It was just looking at it with fresh eyes. I was trying to figure out what the committee would most be able to do.
Can I just respond to that?
Yeah,
I agree with you, but in terms of what the policy would look like, which if you have that policy in place, it is sort of like a mechanism that allows both of the groups to have a say in this, and their say can be actually much broader than this, because item number 3 says the groups may look at such matters as how to, so they're not limited. And the other thing too is I am hoping that we find ourselves in a position, and I believe we will be able to well, first of all, I am going to work on the assumption that the covenant is a viable legal requirement on both parties. And I think it would be interesting for Metchosin to provide a letter to the developers to just make sure that they understand their obligations, because we're working to understand our obligations. And even so much as to let them know what our sense of an appropriate stormwater management plan might look like. So I think that would cover some of the points you're raising. Yeah. Marilyn.
Yeah, thank you for this. It's a great place to start. I appreciate you bringing this forward. I would ask that the Agriculture Advisory Select Committee be also included in this as well. We've got 3 advisory committees that may be able to give some consideration to this. And I like this, that I understand what you're getting at, Councillor Gray, but I think it's also nice to give them examples of what we're looking for, so that they can use their expertise and give us their advice on that. Yeah, those are my comments.
So just a clarification, so this stormwater infrastructure policy, is this for just the bufferlands, or is this for new construction? Is it just infrastructure throughout the district? Is it covering everything?
Well, the key thing is defining major stormwater infrastructure. So the section 2 has the definition there, and it's being located in a riparian area or over 20 square meters in size in terms of the works. So it could apply to other developments. So, but the one limiting thing is, again, it doesn't cover ditching, culvert replacement, and just the maintenance. So it does have its limits. It's not meant to be a broad swath of 4 homes are developed and then suddenly the policy applies. But yeah.
Okay, so then let me narrow it down. Are you talking about new construction, or are you talking about going on people's properties and finding out if they have like a runoff ditch and it's related to some sort of stormwater issue?
It would be, go back to, that's a good question.
Previously, we had a rainwater management bylaw.
So
There are,
Yeah.
yes, and there are, I thought we had a stormwater management plan. At least I know in the past, in these chambers, people have inquired about it with some large buildings, large roofs, and, there's no gutter system, and there is no real plan in the end. So that's what I'm wondering. Are you talking about new construction or?
Well, the intent is, of course, new construction. I guess my hesitation is whether this is covered in the policy. The one thing that is covered here is that MEAS and PTAS have had an opportunity to review and provide comment to district staff. Wait a minute. Okay, sorry. Approval for major stormwater infrastructure shall not be granted until such time as the advisory committees have had a chance to review. So it's talking about new approvals, definitely.
Okay. And would this also be something that could be used if there was a neighbor that was as a result of it, maybe they do have something like this, but maybe it's insufficient or not. I don't really, I'm trying to think about some neighborhoods who I have visited that have had flooding problems due to other neighbors' activities.
Yeah, I'm sensing not, again, unless they came back and had to get something approved through the district. I think the rainwater bylaw would probably have to be put into play then.
Okay.
But it's an interesting idea. My preference would be to not throw that potential into the policy here, but it's
I'm just trying to understand the application.
okay.
Thank you.
Any other comments on this? I can work with Tina to capture further comments, or capture the comments made today. Okay, hearing none, we'll just keep moving on. And next stop for this would be formally bringing this back to the committee for approval, and then we'll bring it to council for adoption, if we so choose. So, great. Councillor?
I just wonder, when you bring it back, if you could just include the current information or bylaws or something that we have on stormwater
Great idea.
along with it.
Okay. Okay, that's it for the councillor's update. Okay, there's one more thing which we'll get to after this, but okay, so we're next going to turn to the rezoning application for 4409 William Head Road. Councillor Craig.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Shukin. I don't believe I have a conflict of interest on the agenda item, as my interests are seen in common with other electors generally. However, I do own property and live immediately next door to 4409 William Head Road, the subject property being discussed. And I'm a registered owner of the community hall at 4401 William Head Road, which is also adjacent property. I think it's possible the decision on the subject property could have an impact on its value, and then maybe on the value of the properties that I am involved with. So in time, I'll get some further advice on this with regard to any conflict of interest I may have. But in the meantime, in order to avoid any perception of conflict, I'm going to step out of the room for this discussion.
Okay, thank you very much. Understood? Yeah. Okay. Thanks, everyone. I'm going to run through the application, and then what I'll do actually is ask Mr. Starr, the property owner, to come up and give us a briefing on what he intends to do, and correct me if I'm wrong here. So, okay, so here's what I understand about this application. So 4409 is a 4.65 acre property that currently has one dwelling, and it's located just down the road here. The property itself is zoned Agriculture 1. However, in the OCP, it has a split designation of village and agricultural. So the village portion is located in the northwest corner, which is just abuts William Head Road. And this is about 1 acre, and there's an existing house in this area. So it's this portion of the land that is being proposed for a rezoning to a designation known as Commercial 2 ALR, and we'll just call this C2 ALR. And there are some other examples of this zoning in the village area as well. So it's important to note that this zoning does not remove the ALR designation and the accompanying obligations from the parcel. And the property owner would be required to get approval from the ALC for non-farm uses of this land. So the report we have states that if approved, the applicant would decommission the existing residence and convert this into a commercial space. The new dwelling would be located and developed on another portion of the property. A new dwelling would be located on another portion of the property. Okay, so with any commercial establishment that the property owner would have to comply with the allowed uses under C2 ALR, so there are specified uses. So these generally run along the lines of bakery, bank, animal hospital, medical clinic, garden center. But I should note that it also includes uses like service station, restaurant, or licensed premise, otherwise known as a bar. Let's call it a bar. So if the rezoning were to occur, only one dwelling would be possible. So this is not a question of a subdivision. It's a rezoning, and it would be a split zone property. Okay. And so our planner has provided us with some options to consider. In short, we can ask the applicant to hold an open house to get community input and to give us more input. We can forego the open house, and we can have the application sent to the referring agencies, and really great information from our planner about who the agencies are that get this application. Or the committee can seek further information from staff or the applicant, or we can simply deny the application right here tonight. Or fifth, we can come up with our own option if we believe that there's something else that we have. So with that, I might call up Mr. Starr, and he can tell me if I've got generally exactly what his plans are. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So I'm Mike Starr, 4409 William Head Road, and so the location of my house is no longer suitable for a residence due to the ever-increasing commercial activity and development in the village core. This development impinges on my personal privacy, health, and right to quiet enjoyment of my home. If you look at slide 1 or picture 1 that I've handed out, you can see there's an air photo in 1991 of my property and this village core. I could have blown it up a bit more. I was going to on my computer, but you can see across the road there was a 5.5 acre property. This is 1991 when I was just about starting renovations, and there's a 5.5 acre property across the road with a huge stand of trees. It was a lot like Cathedral Grove. The Metchosin Cafe was on the other side in 4480. The development there was still there. It was and it was buffered by those trees. The corner store was still there, and the school was a school. If you look at the next slide now, you can now see it. Now what I have across the road and around my property is all trees all the trees are gone. I have a commercial access in front of my home. If you can look at the scale, I measured it all. I'm 30 meters from the exhaust fan. I'm 25 meters from the droning air conditioner, mostly in the summer, it's not on now. 25 meters from the outdoor lounge. I'm 30 meters from the garage, the garbage bins. I'm 25 meters from the idling delivery trucks, which are idling all summer long outside, keeping the air conditioners on their trucks. And I'm 70 meters from mile zero pub. If you look at the next slides, you can see there's just some examples. There's the exhaust fan pointed right at my home. And then the next slide is not the exhaust fumes from the exhaust fan. That's usually around once a month or every 2 months they clean out the grease trap. That's not fumes, that's oil particulates. And I have to make sure that I have all my windows shut. Okay, and you can just see, I just put a picture in there of the Alpine at 5:58 a.m. But there's a lot of activity. Also, the hall, I don't want to pick on anybody, the hall has become increasingly busy. It used to have the occasional wedding and meetings. We used to have the office upstairs was the producers. But it's become steadily busier. It doesn't really regulate hours and noise. On Canada Day, I had a friend over from Vancouver. I couldn't have a barbecue in my backyard. The noise, the band in the hall was just so loud. You can see there it says 1 a.m., but they get the weddings and they go till 2, 3 o'clock sometimes. And you can even see the New Year's Eve was advertised for Victoria. It wasn't just advertised for Metchosin. So it seems to be more like an event center. So it's very busy. And that's the rationale. I'm not a developer, I teach high school. So the solution, which you can look at the last picture, is just more of putting all the commercial activity. So the solution was from the last planner, and she suggested C2ALR, which you already discussed. The existing house can be upgraded for commercial code. That allows me just to keep one residence on the property still, but I can build down the hill off Perry Road. I already have a legal road access there, and I have water there for my farm water, but it's still a legal meter. And down at the bottom of the hill, I will not be as nearly affected by the village core, and it won't impinge on my personal privacy, health, and right to quiet enjoyment. I hope the committee would support option B in the planner's report. I'm not doing any major redevelopment of the lot or changing any character of the property. A public hearing is not necessary at this point. The current residence is staying in place to be converted. Hopefully, we need a medical clinic, really. That's the most thing I'd like to see there. And something in line with OCP uses. And if a public hearing is necessary, I believe it would be more appropriate after the approval of the rezoning when I submit a development plan for a house off Perry Road and a use for the house. And if you have any other questions later after you discuss it, I mean, I had one diagram too to show what was on the property. I didn't include it, but it shows the septic field, which was engineered, and I can give that to the planner at a later date. But most of the property is the septic field. Jared Mull back in 1990, made me put 450-foot line. It's twice as big as the commercial septic field in the 448L. It's all engineered, it's concrete, sand, and drain rock, and it's a pressurized field. And it would be the driveway, the house. So most of the land is taken up by that and the driveway and then the existing house. So there's nothing else is really go in there. Okay?
I have a question or two for
Yeah.
you, but I'm going to ask the
Sure.
committee if any questions for Mr. Starr.
I have a couple questions and a couple of comments.
Okay.
This is not the first time that you've come to council. I have been at meetings when you've been here before,
Right.
and previous owners as well when they've sought commercial activity on this property. And as you've stated tonight, it was a comment that was made before about smells from the cafe and that sort of thing.
It's not smells, it's fumes, yeah.
Fumes,
Yeah.
okay, fumes. Having worked in the restaurant trade, I completely understand what needs to be done to clean out those flues and that sort of stuff. So there is a lot of, like you say, particles and that sort of thing. I know in some communities not too far from us, when there have been restaurants and such put in, some of them have been required to, don't know what it is that they do, but there is a mechanism they can put in place so that it reduces smells and emissions, that sort of stuff. And it's something I think this community needs to be cognizant of, because it is a beautiful piece of property. I travel through
Yeah.
it quite often on foot, and I personally wouldn't want to live near a deep fryer, having worked in the trade. But that would be something I think that we probably need to look at on a larger scale. In the late 80s, there was a proposal from the homeowner at that time to also put a business in there. It was called FTS. FTS is an environmental type of business. It is located now in Langford. It would have been an ideal commercial establishment here, but some residents did not want it. And I'm not sure why it got turned down, other than public opinion. And a tea house was another one that I think was suggested at some point a little bit.
Yeah, I never suggested any business. I came in before, that was in 2010. So I haven't really been here for 10 years.
Right.
That was again just about we redid the whole commercial core and had a whole referendum on that, and just to say, hey, where do we really want it?
Right.
So it was that was more, but again, it was the motivation for what that was, the impingement on my personal privacy and health, and that's the rationale, not a developer. That other guy's a developer. I don't know what he was doing there. It wasn't anything like what I'm suggesting.
Right. So
I'm not building a factory.
No. I wasn't suggesting that. What I was trying to say is there has been an interest to do a commercial entity on this property for years, and the OCP did get updated. We've seen changes in the village core. We've seen property taken out of the LR in the core to put in a business that's not related to agricultural activity. So there's been lots of change in the village. So this is a different time, and I think there are some different options. The planners put together a very good report. This is probably one of the better reports I've seen in many years for options for us to choose from. So I would really like to encourage more dialogue on this for sure. And option A or B. I mean, option A, at some point, if it goes to public hearings, that's the public information comes at that time.
Yeah.
Not necessarily right now.
And just to back up what Councillor Donaldson is saying, is there will be a public hearing because it's a rezoning application. So that'll come in time before it's approved. But yeah.
Right.
So yeah.
Yeah.
But Mayor Little, Councillor, Mayor Little, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just wondering, can anybody remember with the Mile Zero, were they required to have a public information meeting? Mile Zero? I don't
They did
remember
not.
that they were.
No, I didn't even get a notification. I got one letter probably already after it was notified. So yeah,
Yeah.
there was nothing about that.
I don't think so. Perhaps through the chair we could ask the interim CAO. With Mile Zero, Ms. Tarnowski, did we require them to hold a public information meeting?
I'll have to find that information as I wasn't here at that point.
Okay, so then.
I think Steve knows about that. That's probably why he went in to run for council. So
Yeah.
Okay.
he knows
so-
all about that.
Okay,
Yeah.
so I don't think we did, do you remember, Councillor Ed? No. Okay, so I'm sort of feared that we've got a bit of a double standard here, requiring this applicant to have to hold a public information meeting. So that was one of my concerns. But I also wanted to thank the planner for the excellent report. I had all these questions about the septic field, so you've already answered those. So thank you very much.
I could give this to you now if you want, but I was gonna, that's it right there. And I actually have if you want those, I have the original, or I'm supposed to submit them to. I actually have, I save everything, so I have the original, original documents from when I got it done. How it's, the approval and the permit and everything.
Okay, that's great. The one thing that I wanted to ask was in the OCP and considerations, could this be a cannabis or a medicinal cannabis production / sales site? Because I would not be as in favor of that.
No, I mean, I don't think it says that at all. There's nothing in the OCP. I mean, didn't she include that at the end of the report, the OCP?
Yeah, it's 2G, page 21.
Yeah, I don't think it says you can do that. No strip clubs either, that's bad.
If I look at page 25, that does list the allowed uses, the permitted uses.
Yeah.
So
I don't remember that.
And actually, we also have I believe we have a ban on cannabis sales in the district.
So on page 21 of 73, this is our bylaw 259. Under G, cannabis and medicinal cannabis production where designated as farm use must not be prohibited under the agricultural reserve use, must not be prohibited. So that means it's allowed.
Well, I think if we're the question is rezoning to commercial to ALR, then that's actually removed, as I understand it.
Okay.
Yeah.
If we could get clarification on that, that'd be great.
Okay.
Otherwise, as I read through the application a number of different times, it seems to meet the guidelines in the OCP for the objectives for the commercial space and the policies for commercial spaces as outlined on page 15 and 16, the way I read that, as well as the considerations in 7.37. So with that, I'd like to, shall I make a motion, or do you want to have more discussion?
I have a question or two for Mr. Starr and Councillor.
Yeah, I just wondered about the progression of how it works. Like, I'd be interested to find out from, say, the ALC, like whether it's approved under that first, which is kind of the main step before we really look at it, as far as we're concerned, it seems to me. So I'm not sure about all the steps. It was a great report. So, generally, it seems, I don't really have a problem with it, but
yeah, the C2 is still in the ALR. If it's C2, it's still in the ALR, the whole property. Yeah. So they have control over I have to ask their permission to do everything.
Yeah, that's kind of what I mean, is kind of important to
yeah.
find that out, because if they don't give that permission, then it's kind of a moot point, isn't it?
Oh, no, if you approve the split zoning, they won't say anything about that, I'm pretty sure.
So if I could, so option B, both option A and option B does involve making referrals to the external agencies, of which the ALC is one. The question I would have is what information goes to the ALC in terms of what might be done on the land. So that's maybe something to get clarification on. Sir, okay. Go ahead, Councillor Thompson.
So they were talking about the external. How about the internal? And we have the Agriculture Advisory Committee give us some idea with some agricultural activities or whatever. So we've heard from them in recent meetings.
Yeah.
For input. As options. especially if it's gonna go to ALC.
Yeah, they're not listed
Bode well.
as a referral, like a referring body. We could actually make a motion to include them. Yeah. So. Yeah, again, I go back to the question as to how much information we'll have to refer to them. So, but this might be good to clarify with our planner as well. So, but
Or even if I submit the plan for the house, that has to go to the ANR
Yeah.
too, right? So,
yeah. And it sounds like there's a bit of, there are a few referrals you'll have to make.
yeah,
So for the rezoning, then also the activity or the use you want to do.
yeah, that's gotta be later.
Yeah, and for
Yeah.
example, I suspect
Can't
they
do anything,
wouldn't.
so, yeah.
For example, they probably wouldn't, like look too positively on paving a big part of the property.
Right,
For
yeah,
a
sure.
So, yeah, okay. Okay, I have a few questions for Mr. Starr. So can I ask what right now your intention is with the house? Are you planning on,
I mean, I'm living in it.
okay, sorry. If you were, thank you very much.
Yeah.
If you were to get the rezoning done,
Yes.
what is your intention with the house? Would you
I still have to
demolish
live in it. No,
Okay.
I can't demolish. I renovated, spent a lot of money, it looks nice inside.
Okay,
I have to live there. I can't, what can I do? I have to live there still, then I have to go and get a plan for a home down the hill. I also have to get an inspection from a commercial engineer to get it, and say, okay, you need a 200 amp service, you need this structure.
hold on, sorry,
Yeah.
Mr. Starr, one sec. But your intention is to use that portion for commercial purposes? And
Yeah, and that building too.
Yeah, and then you're gonna build elsewhere,
A
it
home.
sounds like.
A home down the
Yeah.
hill,
Okay.
away from the whole purpose is
Yeah.
so I can live on my property in peace and quiet down the hill.
Totally, I got you.
That's the rationale. I'm not a developer.
Yeah, for sure. But what is okay, again, if you were to get the okay, what is your intention with the house? Are you planning on keeping it, or are you, as in developing it into a commercial space, you're gonna bulldoze it for
Yeah, I
a
don't,
space?
nobody should be living there. No, it should be kept there. I want it there, and I want somebody to use it for something like a
Okay.
doctor's office. I think it'll make a great medical clinic. It's nice and peaceful there. You know,
Okay,
you know.
no, thanks, that's my question, I wanted to know. Yeah, okay. What about parking in the driveway? I'm losing track of kind of where you access that house.
Well,
And,
there's a huge big gate you can pull in there, and I have a big driveway. I even have a turnaround. It just says kind of, you know, it's all gravel, so I don't pave anything because
Okay,
it's drains, right?
so the driveway, if it were rezoned to CR2, the driveway allows access to the commercial portion, if it were
Yes.
rezoned.
Yeah. I was just gonna show you on that picture of the septic field. Maybe I could just show you here. Yeah, when you come in the gate, because the
Oh, I see.
the Metchosin Cafe is right here, you come in here and there's there's even a turnaround here. But
Okay.
I'd have to fix it up into the code of the OCP, and it
Yeah.
says you need so many parking spaces per employees or whatever. You know, there's a whole thing in the, I don't know if it's the OCP or bylaw, some bylaw that tells you exactly what you're supposed to
Probably
do.
the land use.
Yeah, the line is probably, that's it, yeah.
Okay, great. No, those are my two big questions.
Yes, it's been there since 1914 or more, so,
Yeah.
you know,
Great.
I think it's, yeah, I'd like to keep it there. I mean, I'm gonna live down the hill, I don't want a McDonald's up there, that'd be horrible, right?
No. Okay.
Yeah.
Let's see. Okay, well, hey, Mr. Starr, thanks very much.
Okay, thank you.
I'm gonna turn to the committee now. We may have another question or two for you.
Okay.
Thanks very much. So, committee, again, I go back, our planners provided us with 4 options, and we may come up with another one. Now, I'll just make a comment here. I have to say, I'm not opposed outright to this application. I think it's consistent with the use of the village. And again, if it is not being subdivided, and if there's a way of, addressing the uses so that we keep in mind both noise and environmental risk. I wouldn't myself be so supportive of having a gas station go there, but we have talked about having a physician's or a medical services clinic. So again, Mr. Starr's raised that possibility. The one thing I would be leery of course, is that if the property is sold and the allowed uses are in place, a new owner can do what they want with that. So that's something to keep in mind. The other thing I would just say in terms of the options before us now, I'm with Mayor Little. Doing a public information meeting at this stage, I don't really see the value of that, but yeah, so. Any further comments from folks from the committee? What seems to be the direction we're heading in is likely option B. And I'll just read it out so I'm clear myself. So option B is do not require the applicant to host a public information meeting. Direct staff to refer the application to internal and external agencies for comment. Request staff to bring back the proposal and the applicable land use bylaw amendment for consideration. So essentially this means that if we take option B, we will get input from the external and internal agencies, and there'll be another chance for this to come back to us and to give some consideration for a bylaw amendment. So to me that seems to be in the direction that we're thinking.
Okay. So with that, I'll take a motion. That the motion is to do not require the applicant to host a public information meeting, direct the staff to refer the application to internal, including the Agriculture Advisory Select Committee and external agencies for commenting, request staff to bring back the proposal and the applicable land use bylaw amendment for consideration, and a site visit for council.
And a site visit as well. Do we have a seconder for the motion? Councillor Johnson. Any discussion? Randall?
Right, so the next step, as I understand, are on page 17 of the agenda, and this is going to start with the if we give the direction to proceed, this will go to referral of the application to the internal and external. So that would be taking care of what Councillor Epp was concerned about in terms of the external communication with the ALC.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and then it would go down to the very last is the public hearing, the first, second, third reading. Okay.
And essentially what you said is we will get 2 more kicks at this, and the public will get 1 more. Well, it will come back to us as a report, and we'll get at that point a chance to forward it to whether back to staff or to move on first and second reading of the bylaw.
Mm-hmm.
And then after that, there will be a public hearing. So.
And this doesn't preclude the public from weighing in if they want to write letters, that they're more than welcome to. It's just we're not mandating the applicant to have a public hearing or a public information session.
Great point. Any further comments? Hearing none, I will call the question on this motion. All in favor? And none opposed. Great. Thank you very much, everyone. And we'll just wait for Councillor Gray to come back. And Tina, I just want to confirm that in addition to option B, we talked about at the Ag Committee, and then also a site visit as well for council. Great, thank you. Okay. Sorry, keep okay, agenda item 7D, the Bufferland Working Group. So the Bufferland Working Group has been discussed since January. Thank you, Mr. Starr.
Thank you.
Take care. C. Sorry.
See. Mm-hmm.
Oh my goodness. Sorry about that. Okay. Item C. This is the North American Amateur Radio Field Day. Thanks very much, Councillor. And the request by way of Chief Dunlop is to allow the group to use a small field behind the municipal hall and the tree area, including the pavilion from Patton Way to the eastern municipal boundary and the field adjacent to the BMX track for parking. Any questions for Councillor, or sorry, Chief Dunlop? She's here tonight. I have one question. Did the group not do something similar last year? Okay.
Yes.
Did it?
It's so successful, they wanted to do it again this year.
Okay, sounds good. Any discussion on this? I'm supportive of making a motion to get this moving. Or if one of the committee members could.
I'd second that.
Okay, so motion made by Councillor Shukin to allow for the use of the small field behind the municipal hall, seconded by Councillor Donaldson. Any discussion? I will call the question. All in favor? And that is carried. Okay, item 7D. So the Bufferland Working Group, just go back really quickly. So everyone can recall that in October of 2021, there was a small item in the Goldstream Gazette announcing the sale or the potential sale of the 113.5 acre parcel of land, known popularly as the Bufferland. And the community responded, I think, fairly decisively, calling into question that potential sale. And from the discussion that followed, there was talk about doing a public engagement on the future of the Bufferland. And essentially, there was some effort taken, but it really didn't get off the ground. And then, of course, the election took place, and we were left essentially with things hanging. So I proposed that we would form a working group to identify and evaluate options for the future use of the Bufferland. And along with that small group, there would be ample opportunity for public input. And we proposed the terms of reference and solicited for applicants to the buffer. And last week, we actually selected 7 people to join Councillor Donaldson and myself in terms of the Bufferland Working Group. And I'd like to now do a rising report as to who those members are. So one of the things that we did is we tried to give a significant weighting to the people who live in the Neil Road area, just because they are directly, and I would say adversely impacted by what is going on in terms of the development of Centre Mountain. So I'm going to just read their names and I'll identify who they are. So, or sorry, where they are located and who they represent, essentially. So Bailey Spiteri is from the local Neil Road area. Mr. Richard Simpson from the local area. Bonnie Hoover from the local area. Karen Hoffman is from the local Neil Road area and also represents PTASC on the committee. Brian Grant is from the broader community. Gary Smurfett from the broader community. And Anna Hall is the representative from MEASC. So there we have the 7 members of the Bufferland Working Group, and we are going to be meeting very soon. And also with that, there will be a public information meeting. We'll go through some background on the Bufferland and hear from the public. And there we are. Thank you very much. And let's keep going down the list. So we're now in correspondence, item 8A, a letter from the APRM. And in a nutshell, the APRM is asking us to consider some amendments to the land use bylaw that would allow for more favorable siting and sizing of homes in terms of agricultural land. Now, it is interesting, I'll just make a comment or two myself. I read the letter and I did find it a bit troubling, and I was struggling to sort of understand where my troubles were. And I have to confess that Bev Bacon identified some of those. Without knowing exactly whether I should or shouldn't, I do feel like there is some problematic elements to what the APRM is actually asking for here, and that is basically a control in house size, primarily to suit agricultural uses. So I'm not ready to jump on this yet, and I'm not ready to jump off it either, but that was the vibe in the first read I got from, the vibe from the first read. Any comments, Lee? Councillor Johnson?
Yes, I see the author to this letter is Kathleen Zimmerman. And Kathleen recently had attended and did a presentation at the Agriculture Advisory Select Committee. It was about a 40-minute presentation. It was very, very well done. What I would like, for the benefit of my council colleagues, is to invite her to do a presentation for council, much shorter, mind you, because a lot of it wouldn't, and why I'm saying that is it actually would tie into this Mr. Starr's proposal for rezoning as well, and some other concerns that we've seen in the community. I mean, I don't know that we have a concern with this property, but there was much more information that she had in this presentation that would be suitable for ourselves and the public to hear. So if the committee would support that, I would suggest that either for the next council meeting or my finance meeting that's coming up in 2 weeks. Just more information that may help us understand this differently. You know, sometimes it's hard to interpret a letter without some background information, but she did a phenomenal job. She has worked, I can't remember if that's still her job, but she has worked with ALC in her career. She has a pretty good read on things, but yeah.
I personally would be supportive of that. Yeah. Any other comments? Mayor Glynn?
Yeah, I read the letter a few times and I struggle with it too, except for if you look at other jurisdictions, Delta, for instance, where they not only considered what the current needs of the community were, but looking forward what we're going to need in the future. And I think we need to do that with respect to Bev Bacon. I understand your comments, but in a lot of ways we can't be saying we're advocating for protecting green spaces and protecting agricultural land and then not protecting it. What they did in Delta was because they saw that the land was becoming so scarce and so expensive, where they had people with a lot of money buying properties and then plunking the house right in the middle of the property, which this letter speaks to it, but also it speaks to the loss of the agricultural land. So once it's paved over, it is lost. And so I'm of both minds, actually, and I think the presentation by Kathleen Sutherland would probably give us a little bit more clarity, but I'm leaning a little bit more to regulation, because we have to think not only what we need now, but what do we need in the future. And also, if we're advocating at the CRD table that we are rural, we're a farming community, I think we need to think along those lines. That's what I'm sort of thinking of, but I agree. I think we need some more clarity and some more information on this. And perhaps our planner could provide us a little bit of more input into this as well.
Great. Councillor?
Yeah, I'd certainly support a staff report on the question, but perhaps before that, we could follow up with Councillor Donaldson, suggest that Kathleen Zimmerman come and talk to us maybe at the Finance Committee. Makes perfectly good sense. I'm way leaning towards doing something like this. It's recommended by the BC Ministry of Agriculture and Food, and it's about preserving agricultural land. What I'm not so sure about, and Kathleen probably can tell us, is these rules, I believe, are part of the Agricultural Land Commission's guidelines as well. Now, I didn't look these up specifically, but certainly siting of the residences, size of the residence, and I also believe laneway distance is part of it, and that might be the siting of the residential use. So the question I would have for Kathleen and then for staff is, does the Agricultural Land Commission have the enforcement powers that they need, or is the process that they're asking municipalities to set up the bylaws to allow enforcement? And that's what I'm not clear about. But I would support the direction proposed by the APRM in this instance.
Great. Well, I'm very supportive of having Kathleen come and probably to the finance committee if that works. And we could go from there. I like the idea, Councillor Gray's idea of staff report, but only after we hear from Kathleen
Okay,
again.
I will contact her and arrange that.
Great.
with
I don't,
staff.
I don't think we need a motion to do, yeah, okay, great. I will say, yeah, I know Kathleen, she's got a wonderful mind in terms of ALC stuff and an understanding of how the ALC works and obligations around ALR stuff. And she was instrumental in helping getting some action on a very significant dumping situation on Souk Road, which we'll hear more about as the year unfolds here. So, great. Thanks very much. And we'll just keep moving down the agenda, which is the CRD Regional Growth Strategy Indicator Report. And I think this is the second year that I've seen this and paid attention to it. And I think it's wonderfully done in terms of the simplicity and the indicators that they have. And any comments from the committee? It's on page 48, 44, something like that. Councillor?
I just had one that I wish there were little indicator things that go from red to orange to yellow to blue. They actually said what those were.
Yeah, they get into some depth in the reports themselves, so.
Yeah, but they don't actually describe a little half moon,
Yeah,
you know, as far as the degrees of, you know, I guess it goes with the
Yeah.
report later, but
Yeah,
you know,
no,
I didn't find them very useful.
okay. I did, just in terms of not having to sit through more detail. Yeah. Any Councillor Gray?
Well, I just appreciate receiving the report and being able to leaf through it. I think you guys all know I'm a big supporter of the regional growth strategy, but I'm seeing the words here just repeating really what Mayor Little said earlier: keep urban settlement compact, protect the integrity of rural communities. So we've got sort of these guidelines now that put us in good place, you know, around that housing strategy to talk about. Sure, we do need to increase affordable housing and below market housing, but in suburban and urban areas close to transit and bike infrastructure. It doesn't really apply to us. But looking through this is very helpful to get a sense of where are we going and how are we doing as a region. I much appreciate it.
Absolutely. Hearing no further comments, I think we just maybe get a motion to receive, and it's worth a closer look though as we go.
So moved.
Councillor Gray and seconded. Councillor Johnson. And further discussion? Hearing no further discussion, call the question on motion to proceed. Thank you. And I believe that is it for the community planning meeting. And a motion to adjourn, please. Councillor Johnson and Mayor Gray, or Mayor Little. All in favor? Thank you. This meeting's adjourned. Thanks.
Okay, we're moving on to the Public Works and Productive Services Committee meeting. Are there any additions or amendments to the agenda? If not, do I have an approval for the agenda? Moved by Councillor Donaldson, seconded by Councillor Gray. All in favor? Right, public participation.
Hello everyone, I'm Tamsin, I'm the president of the Metchosin Producers Association, and our farmers market runs every Sunday from May to the end of October with the Christmas market in December. I read in the agenda package this evening that MACA is proposing a market at the old Metchosin School parking lot on Sunday, August the 13th from 10 till 4. We fully support all the community events our farmers market does, but we suggest that the group can choose an alternative date so it's not in direct competition with the farmers market. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else?
Beth Bacon, the chosen resident. I've submitted this so you have it, you've memorized it, but I'd like to read it for the benefit of anybody else if it tweaks something where they think they agree with it, they disagree with it. It's my point of view on how we can make our roads safer and at the same time do something positive for climate action. And I'm calling it Everybody Walk and Roll. And this is about reducing traffic speed, both for safety and for our climate action plan. And I was quick to write this when I see that Saanich, Victoria, and Esquimalt are all moving towards reducing the speed limit. And I thought, if we don't do it in a rural area, they're just going to whip through us the way they are. And I appreciate that we've reduced the speed limit towards the village core, and we have a speed limit around our schools, which is really great. But we still have traffic cutting through and going really fast on Kangaroo, Lindholm, Paris Road, Metchosin Road. And it's written out that this is really good for motorbikes because they can go fast. People test their hot cars here. And people cut through from Souk and East Souk because they can zip through. And I think we could make ourselves safer and do something that's relatively easy and unobtrusive to our climate action plan if we would reduce our speed even more in more areas. And what we have to protect us is a sign entering Metchosin with teeny tiny pictures of some of the vulnerable road users. And I don't think I could tell you everything that's on that sign, but I don't think it changes driver behavior. That's not enough, and not from my observation. And we're just taking our chances out there if we're riding our bike, riding our horse, walking, pushing a baby carriage, or in our time maybe riding in our motorized handicapped scooters. We're all at risk there. And what have we got to protect us is a white line. And apparently these cars are going to stay on their side of the white line, but that doesn't make me feel any safer. And we've missed a lot of opportunities to do roadside trails, and it's not this council's fault. This council, and actually the council before, has really made good strides. And under Councillor or Mayor Little's guidance, we've made some, and Councillor App, we've made some advances in roadside trails. And it was sort of looking like maybe we could do a roadside trail every year. But I'm asking if could we accelerate that? And of course I want you to find the money in not resurfacing our roads and giving us some potholes that will slow the traffic down. And enforcement. Now that we're paying more for police, could we have some enforcement, please? And I think the council could insist on that. I haven't seen enforcement for speed here in the 23 years I've been here, so I hope that will change. And so the district does wonderful examples of roadside trails. I love Lombard, Kangaroo, Rocky Point, and Pears. And I just think that we should not be, and I bring to your attention that 30% of us are over 65, and we don't need to get anywhere in a hurry. And we don't need to get anywhere very often. And we prefer to get wherever we're going safer. So I think this is the easiest way to make a difference in our vehicle emissions. And I just really wish I had the science to tell you, but I'm sure somebody does, or maybe I can access it, about how much we're going to save in greenhouse gases if the vehicles slow down. But I know it's significant. And maybe the Saanich and the Esquimalt and Victoria have that information ready at hand because they're making the decisions to go that way. While I'm on the topic of traffic safety, I'd like to point out, and as Councillor Epp has informed us too, that Kangaroo Road, where it comes off on Highway 14, is a death trap. That you're taking your life in your hands if you're going along Kangaroo and you want to turn towards Souk. You just, hold your breath and gun it because you can't really see, the traffic's going so fast. Now, and that's not our responsibility, but we could ask to have something done about that. But what is our responsibility is, and that's our highest place for accidents. That's where most of the crashes take place. The second most prevalent place for our crashes to take place is Lindholm at Happy Valley. And that is our responsibility. So maybe we can do something about that. And where I want you to be proactive, and I've mentioned this before, is with the Beckingham subdivision that's coming up. Potentially, if they're successful in getting 40 lots and you can have a secondary dwelling on every property, there could be 40 families and maybe 2 or 3 cars for each family, and all are coming and going. Get yourself onto Beckingham and try and turn onto Kangaroo Road. Or get yourself onto Kangaroo Road and try and turn onto Beckingham. It's scary. You can't see what's coming over the hill. It's a bad intersection, and part and parcel of allowing 40 more families to live there should be making that corner safe. And thank you for considering my ideas.
Thank you. All right, anyone else, or we'll move along? All right, on my update, so I just wanted to continue what Councillor Schicken mentioned about it being Volunteer Week. There's a little plaque on the wall at the fire hall. I noticed the other day, and it really hit home, and it says, more or less, it says, volunteering is the ultimate exercise in democracy. You vote in elections every few years, but when you volunteer, you vote every day about the kind of community that you want to live in. And I thought it was just great, because Metchosin really is a volunteer-run community. I can't imagine where we'd be without all the volunteers that just do so much work. So thank you to all of them. So other than that, I find my update here.
Item 4.
What did I do?
Adoption of minutes.
Right, okay, sorry. Always something. Can I have a motion to adopt the minutes of the public service?
So
Okay, thanks. On March 13th. Okay, moved by Councillor Schicken, seconded by Councillor Donaldson. All in favor? All right, now we can move on. All right, so in road safety, just continuing with Bev's comments, is we are, it is in the report here that we have 2 new radar speed signs coming, and they're going to put bases on the busy roads, so they'll be moved around from place to place. So hopefully that will be a help for that. We do have in the budget coming up, there is money for a roads consultant, and I'm thinking once that person is in place that we can go around the community and kind of target places where we might change the speed limits in the future. I'd like to see some of them lower as well. Public Works are busy as always. And the school, I won't go over all of these things, but one thing is with the cell phone towers. Last month, we met with Rogers because I had spoken to various different representatives over the last term and this year about it, and never really gotten anywhere. So actually we were able to get a meeting with some of them, and it sounded pretty positive. I was going to recommend that we write a letter and detailing some of the problems, which is no service, inability to call it during emergencies, the spotty cell service affecting first responders' ability to use the mapping and the CAD systems, dropped calls, connecting to the US instead of Canada, roaming charges, and frustration for people working from home. They did ask that we send, even though we have sent letters in the past, that we do again, because they really seem to need confirmation about that. Rogers said that they seem to have more money that they're willing to put into a cell phone tower, improved service this year than TELUS has. They seem TELUS has cut back on quite a bit of their towers that they were planning. So at any rate, the mayor has asked that we defer doing the letter until we have a little more discussion about it. So moving on from there, we have a great staff report from Chief Dunlop on the fire hall renovations, and we do have have funds coming for a feasibility study. It's been confirmed by CAO, Ms. Tarnowski, that we'll be able to take the funds for the feasibility study out of the growth, community growth fund that's coming from the province. So it's not in the budget, but it will be happening. So I don't know if you had any more comment, Chief Dunlop, about all the information in here. There's a binder on the counter, right? Is it on the counter if anyone wants to look at these various studies that have been done so far? But this is a really comprehensive report, and you know, we're going to be having lots of input coming up on that. So other than that, we'll just move on to some of our correspondence. So we had a couple of letters regarding the fire hall. One from Bill Cave and his thoughts on the replacement. He feels that, you know, that possibly we should do more long-term planning on a replacement, maybe just repair what is there and consider the carbon footprint of a new building. Mr. and Mrs. Greenslake from the other side, and they believe that we should move ahead with replacing the fire hall to have a safe place for our firefighters to operate in emergencies.
Councillor. So just a quick comment on the two letters. I think we decided that we're moving ahead with the feasibility study. We're not delaying it. And I think that for like the implication of that is we're moving ahead with, there's no delays and barriers artificially to moving ahead with looking at a new hall.
Right.
So, yeah.
Right, thanks.
Can I speak to that then? Do you call it my letter?
Sure. We don't normally do this, but
Well, I mean, if I can't. I just thought that's why I'm here, just in case.
well, that's what we do have the public participation for that particular purpose, but
I misunderstood. I thought being thought it was on the agenda, I would be asked if I wanted to make any further comments another time. It looks like it's a done deal anyway. So.
well, no, there's going to be plenty of opportunity for public input on it. It certainly isn't going to be just an instant, you know, this is going to be a long-term, going through all the processes that we need to go through.
You know where you're going to end up at. I mean, you're not going to spend, you know, $20,000-$30,000 and not go ahead and do it, I hope.
Well, let's
That would be a bit surprising.
yeah. Anyway, you know, I'm not going to read each letter completely, because if you read one, then you've got to read all of them. And certainly sometimes we get a lot of letters, a buffer zone, for example. And if we read through every letter that we had, we'd be here until tomorrow. So I really appreciate all the input that people put into sending letters and sending them, and we do read them for sure, and they are on the website or in the packages for the meetings, and everyone can read them. There they are. So we also have a letter from Nikki Doe from MACA about the planned markets they've got, and that will be something that, you know, staff will be looking into as far as approval for those dates, and hopefully working with you know, mentioning what you mentioned about the farmers market and possible conflicts coming up for that. And we've heard from Bev Bacon about the reduced speed limits, and there's also a message from.
Sorry. Just really quickly, I want to go back to the comments that Jackie made about the MACA event and the Makers Market, and I'm just trying to think if there's the potential as we move along to recommend some guidelines for the groups. I mean, I don't think we're ever in control. We say you can't do that, but there might be some recommendations that we can make in the future. I don't know what they might look like, but just even keeping an eye on how things unfold this year in terms of conflicts with parking and congestion, it might be interesting to observe that with an eye of giving the groups guidelines as to when they hold their meetings and resolving conflicts. Any thoughts on that, Pete?
Well, I think once we have getting management in place for the school and the grounds, which hopefully can extend, you know, to all the grounds, or at least as far as a calendar, an online calendar where people can see what is going on at that time, and then deal with the staff or whoever's managing that to sort that out. And there was a letter from Chris Vanderwater saying that MACA, for the time being, is dropping plans for a stair lift to get to their upper level.
Councillor, could I make a suggestion that we invite Mr. Cade back? That's the second time that he's had a letter, this letter, and it's been received for information. I think he has some interesting points here. I think it's just really great for democracy if we invite people that they may not align with what we're thinking, but I think it would be great for the public to hear what he was talking about in terms of thinking outside the box.
Well, he's certainly welcome to come to public, and speak at public presentations. So
Okay.
to me, that would be, fine. I think just as Bev Bacon did regarding her letter.
I think he misunderstood the process. So if we could extend an invitation for the next meeting, that'd be great.
Well, I did mention it to him this time. I think there's going to be a lot of opportunity for public input once we get the feasibility study done. We're going to be having meetings and all kinds, but I mean, he's welcome to come to the next meeting and speak about his letter. With that, I'll just call a motion to adjourn.
Can I ask some questions about some things that were in your councilor's update?
Sure.
So the fire department has a new truck, and I came home from the conference this weekend because people asked me there, and they asked me out in the community about this big truck, and so I was looking for the Muse because I remember it being on the front page. So I went to read the article, and there's just a picture. So in reading the monthly reports that are in the package from the fire chief, which was great, I love the fact that it was all bulleted. We've had it now for a month, and I would like, through the chair, to ask a question of the fire chief if I could.
Sure.
I would like to know if council could have an orientation of the fire truck and go on a ride along in the fire truck to see where this vehicle is able to take us.
You're here.
Absolutely.
Can you come to the mic, Fire Chief, just so it can be recorded with Ms. Hanson?
Good evening. Absolutely. Once we get it finally in service, we do have it in service right now, just not everything, not all the equipment is loaded up. We just want to kind of, work out some of the kinks in it first, make sure it's how we need it to flow. And then, now there's only 4 seats in it, so we're going to take turns. But maybe we'll do the council orientation of the fire department and EOC. We can share on that out then.
That would be a good plan. And can you give us an update of what's happening with the one that is out of service, the old number?
Right, so we're in the process of getting that up on some used fire engine marketplace. I gotta say though, it's pretty old, probably not gonna get a lot out of it. We have had a couple of local people that have said if nobody else buys it, they haven't given me a dollar value yet, but might consider doing that as well and then donating it back to like the school or something like that. So we're just investigating options at this point in time. I have been talking with the interim CAO about that as well.
Okay, thank you. And can you explain to me what swift water rescue technician training is?
Sure, it's just deep water training.
Okay.
So for taking our boat out onto Metchosin Lake or onto the shoreline for rescue, body recovery, that sort of thing. We've actually used the boat. We use that rescue team probably 4 to 5 times a year at least, and have done a lot of mutual aid with it as well.
Okay.
Yeah, we're one of the only agencies along the shoreline here that actually have that. So.
Didn't you go out and rescue a kayaker?
We've done that 3 times.
3
yes.
times?
Yeah. And we just used it. We had some young folks that got stuck on the island at Metchosin Lake and couldn't get back, so we went out there and brought them back safely. So yes, we've used it a few times.
Thank you. And thanks for your report. That was really well done.
And also on Facebook, you just announced that there's the West Shore Fire Expo.
Yes.
Now, is that here at Instinct or is it down at West Shore?
So there's 3 different really big events that are coming up. One is the West Shore Expo. It's an emergency preparedness. Sorry, I'm going to take away the expo word. It's emergency preparedness. That's what's on Facebook. And that is out at the Wanafika Rec Center, West Shore Parks and Recreation. I don't know what it's called now. Out in Colwood. And that's all the local area departments and emergency programs. That's we've done it for years, where you have all the fire trucks that are out there and emergency programs, all that sort of thing, for between 11 and 3. And that's, okay, I don't remember the date on that one.
It's, I think it was the 25th or something.
Maybe, yeah. And then next week, Tuesday and Wednesday, we have our Fire Expo here. We've been doing that for 24 years. And this will be the 24th year here, and we've moved it over to the school, just because now, oh look, we're bringing kids back to the school. It makes more sense than taking our fire department completely out of service. So this is it's 2 days. We bring in 1,000 grade 4 students over the course of 2 days and just teach them through stations fire safety initiatives. So the RCMP is involved, ICBC is involved, a lot of different School 62 fire departments, emergency program, Fire Smart, all that. So it'll be a really fun event. So we'll be using that space there. You'll see lots of kids, lots of buses, no cars, but lots of kids.
Okay.
That's it.
Thank you.
And then we do have on the 29th, April 29th, we have Assistant Chief Cavan's funeral, the
Yes.
line of duty death that we will be attending.
Yes.
So, and that'll be in May.
There is a march to that. Yes. Okay, thank you.
Any questions?
Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
And Councillor, one more question. Mavra has a recycle room, and I noticed that there's I don't know where this is, somewhere near a furnace room, and there's a bigger room and a smaller room, and there's something being moved.
I actually need to, forgot to mention that, but we're just gonna sort of waylay that one for now, because there's been some misinformation about that, so we gotta clarify exactly what's going on with that little room.
Okay.
Their report, I just took what they were saying, but there is maybe not quite that way.
Okay, yeah, this council at one point was going to have a tour of all of our buildings, so hopefully that'll happen within the next month or something, so we have an understanding of what's there. That's one of our buildings.
Yes, hopefully.
I have a question too.
Okay.
I had the question on, that's on page 8 of 84 of the agenda regarding the Woody Beach stairs. So the Woody Beach stairs were just redone, I think it was in 2021 or 2, and then they needed to repair it again. I wanted to ask through the chair to the CAO or the interim CAO, maybe we could have a report on that, why it was needed, the geotech monitoring, I hadn't heard about that, and then how much it cost, because I don't remember seeing it as a budget item. So could we have that?
Would that be okay?
I can do that.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I don't remember seeing anything about it either, so. All right, and there's one more thing
There is a budget line item. I remember asking about what it was for, and it was $2,500. So now we know. But being that those stairs were replaced, I also would like to know what actually happened to the fairly new stairs. So
Yeah, we never got any information about exactly what they were doing, I don't think.
Right. Okay, that'd be good to hear. Thanks.
Anything more?
No, I just, at $2,500, I don't know if that would even that would cover the cost of the geotech engineer, so it'd be good to have that information going forward. Thanks.
Right. One thing that was interesting that came from the Seniors Association was this letter from William Head from the Community Connections group they call themselves. And it's quite interesting we had all heard about the groups, the crews that will come and work on trails and so on, but this is a different group that actually, builds things, and it's quite neat. It said on the bottom, it said, what would you think about us making some things for the Metchosin community and or senior center? It would be things like picnic tables, benches, chairs. It can also be household things like spice racks, paper towel holders, etc. Some of the guys can get very creative here. Maybe we can take the idea to the board or even Metchosin Council. Something that's really interesting that might be, maybe if groups or community groups have any fundraising they might like to do, they might be wanting to be in contact with this Community Connections at William Head. They really, he said they have a lot of inmates here who love and are very passionate about giving back to the community. and is one of the leads of the program we have here called Community Connections. So anyway, this is a letter from a fellow named Hoff Christian, so might be something to keep in mind for the future. And are there any more questions from anyone on this report? Councillor Donaldson.
I have another one, just for clarity's sake. So there's another pink piece of paper, well, the same one, I guess, but on the front page. For upcoming, there's a repair cafe. It says the Cirque open house, but in another, I think it might have been your update where it said Maca was doing repair cafe. So where's the actual location and who's actually in?
Mac is doing it right by the school. There, it'll just be. I'm not sure exactly whether where they're setting up out there. There's going to have some tables and various people that will repair small appliances, sewing machines, and so on. And I think CERC will have they'll probably have coffee, or just people can wander in and have a look at the center.
Okay, so it's an open house on the same day. So
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
That's it. All right, could I have a motion to adjourn, please?
So moved.
Moved by Councillor Shukin, seconded by Councillor Donaldson. All in favor?
People want to stand up and stretch for a minute, that's okay.
I've seen one of the Mac junk rooms. It's not that impressive. The little side door where PTAS had its stuff.
Yeah, I don't know. They said, and the thing they said, she said, Stephanie had, who's doing the list, and Stephanie said she had no idea.
Oh,
Okay, so,
funny.
how you're supposed to do it.
Okay.
So anyway,
Yeah.
kind of embarrassing, but yeah, I don't know if he told me something. I'll take it.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, if everybody's ready, we'll start up, call the meeting to order of the Environment and Natural Areas Committee of the District of Metchosin, April 17, and it's 8:50. I just want to start with a territorial acknowledgement to say that we're happy to be here on the traditional territory of the Coast Salish people and particularly the Shanu Nation, our close neighbors. We had an interesting meeting at Miaska maybe a couple of weeks ago with the Shanu Ocean Resource Center people. Michael Campbell was there representing, and 3 other members of the Ocean Resource Center, and Fire Chief Dunlop was there as well. And it was quite we're always learning things, and it was just a lovely greeting that Michael Campbell gave us, which was to say that Chief Chips had sent the group there to tell us that our concerns were their concerns, and we are all one community. It was just a lovely sentiment, and one that was much appreciated that evening. So with that, we have an agenda here, and I wonder if there's any additions to the agenda or changes that people would like to see. Seeing none, we'll just take the agenda as presented. Public participation. Would anybody like to say a word of public participation tonight?
Eric White, 4290 Metchosin Road. I know you guys are doing a lot already, so I'd just like to throw this out there that New York City has a rat problem, and Metchosin has a rabbit problem. New York City has decided to deal with their rat problem in the same way that I think it should be possibly dealt with here in Metchosin, and that's by using dogs. They get terriers, groups of people go out with their terriers at night, and they hunt rats. And we have the Dogs of Metchosin working group, and I think that in a long-term strategy, if it was put forward to them, that they could be using their animals, training them on a humane, with dogs, it can be a humane way of dealing with infestations of rodents. They were bred for this in the past. This is what many dogs, they're bred for. And I think one of the biggest parts about it is that if you're concerned about the humaneness of it, dogs are fantastically trainable in their ability not to harm things. For instance, we had a dog on our property the other day, and it picked up one of our chickens and took off with it, and then it put down the chicken, and the chicken was absolutely fine, and it was astounding. Just the way the dog handled it, And then once it was done with it, it put it down. So you can teach your dog to catch the rabbit, bring it to you. You can put it, in a cage and take it to Wild Ark and feed it to the birds. And I think it's a win-win for the people, farmers, and the dogs. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. Anyone else?
I wrote this at like 20 past 6 tonight, and I think I was getting a little punchy. I'm writing to support your in sending the letter that MIASC has provided for the spill response. And so I said, I give my support 100% to the work being done by MIASC in pulling the wool off Metchosin's eyes about the potential disaster that could come from an oil spill off our coast. And I urge Council to send MIASC's a letter which is well-informed and well-crafted. Please be strong, don't back down, there's so much at stake. And in case you missed it, in the Goldstream Gazette for March 29th, it shows 2 exhilarated young First Nations girls, because they're going to learn to be deckhands. Isn't that great? And then if you turn to page A7 for the rest of the story, they're going to be deckhands on the tugboat that tugs oil tankers past our coast. And I realize this is delicate now, because these are our neighbors, and they have jobs. I don't want oil tankers carrying bitumen past our coast, towed or otherwise. I also appreciate the significance of the jobs, and I trust Council to know best how to navigate this situation. We want to be good neighbors. We want to protect our coast. I trust that MIASC has looked carefully at the risks and has cut through the arguments that don't hold water. We can't bury our heads in the tar sands. There's an obligation to be informed, speak up, and hold firm. Let's hope for support from the other municipalities. Go team Metchosin.
Thank you, Bev. Any other participation? Well, thanks very much. I guess the next item on our agenda is adoption of minutes of the Environment and Natural Areas Committee meeting of March 13th.
So moved. Move adoption.
Thank you. Councillor Shukin,
Second.
and seconded by Councillor Donaldson. Any discussion? Seeing none, we'll call the motion. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Now, with receipt of minutes from the Environment Advisory Select Committee of March 28th, 2023.
Move receipt.
Thank you, Councillor Shukin.
Second.
And thank you, Councillor Donaldson, for second. Any discussion? Seeing none, we'll call the question. All in favor? Great. Carried. Thank you. The next item is receipt of minutes of the Environmental Advisory Select Committee meeting of April 5th, 2023.
Move receipt.
Thank you, Mayor Little, and seconded by
I'll second.
Councillor Donaldson. Thank you. Any discussion? We'll call the question then. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. We have no business arising, and the reports will be my councillor's update. So the first item I wanted to talk about was the climate plan, action plan being developed by Pinnis Sustainability. That's the consultant, the local firm that's been working on that for us. They're the people who completed the Highlands climate action plan some time back, and I believe that's why they were selected to work on our plan, given it was another rural community. Of course, under the previous council, the focus was on greenhouse gas emissions, and for Metchosin and its residents. I guess we all recall that the consultants' work was nearing completion when we were elected, and we delayed their work on the opinion survey that was going to go out because we wanted to I talked to them about climate adaptation in addition to greenhouse gas emission reductions. The revised public survey went out with some adjustments to capture adaptation initiatives, and thanks to everyone who took part. I think about 155 people responded, and that they've been consulting feeling that's a pretty good response. Apparently a lot of written comments and detailed concerns, which is hopeful. We did get a handful of emails from various residents concerned about a bias in the survey, lack of recognition of the rural nature of Metchosin, our community, also the nature of the information being collected, and more. I've spoken to most who sent us emails or sent us letters, and I think they're all content now to hear what's coming next from the consultants. And all of those emails and correspondence have been provided to PINA for inclusion in their analysis and development of a plan for us. But to be clear, the survey that was done, and we'll hear from PINA Consulting in not too distant future, was an exercise, not a scientific sort of survey or anything like that, nor things of statistical significance, but just basically get the temperature of the community. Are people concerned about climate? There are people in Metchosin who aren't. Who is, and how many people are they, how concerned are they? Are they ready to act? Are people interested in the district acting? Would they see us putting money towards this? That's the general idea of the survey, just to get that feeling from people in the community. So last few weeks, the planner, Ms. Catherine Lazetian, and I met with Steve Roddick, the first time that I've met him. It was a pleasure to talk with him on Zoom, and I think he gets where we're coming from and what we need from a climate plan in terms of the unique perspective from Metchosin being a different kind of a community than, say, an urban center. He'll be holding a workshop with council from 2 to 4 p.m. on Tuesday, April 25th, to provide some information to council on climate planning, let us know about the survey responses, and he'll be looking for some guidance from council on specific actions and directions. But in order to provide another opportunity for public input, Rick Perron, who's the chair of MIASC here tonight, and myself have been talking about it, and we've agreed that on the same day, Tuesday, April 25th, in the evening, we have a scheduled MIASC meeting. What we'd like to do is provide an opportunity for the public to come then from 7 to 9 p.m. to provide input. More or less an open mic to hear from people, not an evening of debate and arguing about, but more of a brainstorming for people who've got ideas to come and offer them. Not to take away from people who've already been working and put information to us earlier in the survey, but just to add what might come. So we'll keep track of comments and ideas that come forward, and we'll provide that material to Mr. Roddick to have further consideration in terms of inclusion into the plan.
Councillor Gray.
Yes.
Is it? Do you mind if I ask a few questions on this item, or you
jump right in?
Okay. Thanks very much. And so, questions about the early session on April 25th.
Yeah.
Are any sense of what we will have before the actual session? Will we have like a draft of PINA's plan, or will we have a draft of the report from the survey response?
I could ask if he would provide that beforehand. It won't be a draft plan, no. What he's doing, there was a workshop previously with council that I didn't attend, but I understand the format was one where there's a presentation and then council provided feedback and ideas about what they were thinking, given the sort of the general outline of what a report might look like, and then also provide some feedback to everybody about what's happened in the survey, what ideas people had, and what correspondence they received otherwise. So the notion is that that discussion is largely one with council, though, rather than a discussion with public. It's sort of getting a feel for what do we think of things. I'll ask them, though, about what material he might provide beforehand.
Yeah.
Councillor Shu.
Thanks. Sorry, a few more questions, Councillor. Yeah, I think it would be really great to get the survey, and again, some far in advance this week. It would be interesting to just get it, again, as you say, a read on the temperature in the community. And I'm trying to wrap my head around MIASC holding the session to get client comments and input from the community. In some ways, I'm not. It was something I was expecting that the committee would do. I'm not opposed to MIASC doing it. In some ways, it's actually better because we won't have staff burdened with taking all the comments down, and if Mias can do that, all the better. But any sense of your thoughts on how that meeting will be structured and how we can actually make sure we capture public input?
Certainly, excuse me. When I was talking to Rick about this, I was proposing that it be an open mic for people to feel free to come and speak. And then we keep pretty good minutes at the MIASC meetings. And so we would basically keep a list of all the different ideas and organize them according to, there's going to be a number of strategic directions that Steve Roddick from Pennant Consulting will be providing to council earlier in the day, and we'll use those same ones to sort of guide the discussion and sort the ideas and things that come forward. I would perfectly fine, like every advisory committee, for council to come, but you'd be in the audience, not sitting at the table in terms of the information. So we wouldn't be constituting a council meeting, but rather having a meeting where people are simply coming to talk with us. But if people have got some other ideas of how we might run that, to be all ears. Mayor Little.
Yeah, thank you for this. So regarding the meeting from 2 to 4 on April 25th, is the public open to come to this, or is this just for council?
It's an open meeting.
Okay, great. And then the meeting later in the night. It is a bit unusual that MIASC would be doing the public engagement. Normally that is the role of the committee. And unfortunately, I would have loved to have attended had I known about it, but I've already got a booking for that evening, so I can't attend. So I would suggest that the committee also hold some kind of an open house public meeting where so the consultants only have a few hours between 4 p.m. and when this meeting starts at 7 to come back with what they've presented and our feedback. I think it would be better that the committee hold some kind of public engagement. MIASC, of course, is welcome to do that. It's just a bit unusual for an advisory committee to do that as opposed to the committee. This is the committee that should be sitting at the table for that.
Well, thank you for that input. I suppose this is not particularly different from the working group on the buffer land, where we're having a working group who's not council, hearing from the public and taking the comments. So I guess I was feeding off of that idea, but I get your point that that's not typical, but that's how we were doing the other work, so I thought it fit well. Councillor Dawson.
Just for clarity, so Mr. Roddick will be coming on Tuesday the 25th from 2 to 4. That meeting's open to the public.
Yeah.
Is he attending MIASC that evening as well, or no?
No, I don't expect so.
Okay.
In other words, people may attend the afternoon session, hear the presentation, hear council's comments, or not, and then attend in the evening. And we'd be presenting the basics. It's sort of just not dissimilar, I suppose, to a survey where you're putting some ideas out and saying, what do you think, and can you give us some ideas? And all I was attempting to do with this was to make sure there's another opportunity for people to come and talk, give us some ideas.
Mm-hmm. Oh, sorry.
Certainly.
Any sense, Councillor Gray, on where we are at with the resources that we have for PNIT to do its work? Do they have enough funding to provide a credible report after all this input, or are we kind of near the end of our building up?
I think we're doing fairly well. I mean, I haven't worked with them before, and they're pretty close to finishing before we arrived on the scene in terms of just doing the check-in with, or at least as far as I understand. So, but we've chosen to spend very little money on this. So this is like a $15,000 investment compared to, say, our agricultural plan, which would be $40,000. It'd be a much more robust thing going on there. But having talked to Mr. Roddick on the phone, having looked at the Highlands report, which this is kind of based on, I'm comfortable that we're going to come along and do okay. But there'll always be more work to be done, right? So this is the beginning. We have no money in the budget to do much in the way of implementation of this plan. So we have a whole budget cycle to think about what comes out of this, what's possible within our budget and what isn't. But we've made specific decisions not to fund specific activities. So, how useful the plan will be or how soon we can get going on some of the items in it, I'm not sure. there's an awful lot of work going on right now, and with the fire department that we know about in terms of mitigation and issues around preparation for major fires. There's our POD, emergency response groups. There's other work like that. There's a culvert. We're looking at the culverts apparently and have some survey already done of culverts, so that's helpful. I mean, we'll wait and see what comes from the report, but I'm interested to see how it comes together, and if we need to do more afterwards, I'm open to doing that as well.
Yeah.
It won't be completely blank on greenhouse gas emissions, by the way. We're part of the CRD, just like the regional growth strategy we looked at earlier. We have responsibilities to report into the CRD for the bigger issues, and that kind of those questions will arise naturally out of the earlier work that PIN has done and whatever more we received in the surveys.
Great. Sorry, just one follow-up. The concerns I had when I first saw Pina's work from Highlands is it didn't seem to really open a door for engaging the community. So I think the work that we've moved toward now, whether the survey or just even, again, hearing more from the community and keeping it open as a living document, I think will hold us in good footing as well.
Mm-hmm.
So,
thank you. One thing that I'll endeavor to do tomorrow is get this up on the website, see if we can get some people on Facebook to put up some information, both about the, if it's proper, about the council meeting, so-called workshop, and then the evening meeting as well. See if we can get on some email list, and so make sure as many people know about this as possible. What I've come to learn in the short time that I've been a councillor is that a workshop doesn't really mean a workshop. It's a workshop means a meeting, and the formality of that. So the whole idea was by involving me, ask if we can get a little bit looser here and have a meeting where we're hearing from the public throughout the evening, which is a change, but and I understand different from the regular way that we might work, but hopefully it'll be useful. Maybe I'll move from that, if that's okay, to the next item on the agenda, or on my council's update, which was tanker traffic risks. So just a little bit of background. We had, of course, received correspondence from Trans Mountain Corporation, who were asking us to comment on Environmental Assessment Office requirements. So there's about the behavior of bitumen. And MEAS looked at that, provided a pretty complete report back to the Trans Mountain, and laid out a number of concerns. And our biggest concerns, or some of our biggest concerns, they basically said, it's not in scope for the Environmental Assessment Office to learn about your concerns. So as far as we know, they've just been put aside. We got a response and put them to one side. And so at MEAS, we took a look at that and thought more about how we could raise really the most important issue of all with the province. And so we prepared the letter that you have before us tonight. And that's really for us to say, not back to Trans Mountain, because we've kind of gone that avenue. They were looking for input from coastal communities and from First Nation communities. We provided input and they said, well, thanks, but we're not that interested. The key issue for us is that by looking at the weather that we normally have here, a lot of the spill response on the ocean can't take place because boats are not permitted to launch under Transport Canada rules to go out there and deal with things. And it's dangerous. So they stay ashore. And the effort with this letter is to let the province know, hey, it's your environmental office. They may not be looking at it, but Minister, would you be interested? And so we laid out the letter, you can see, raising basically the issue that we can't really get out there and respond about 40% of the time. And would it be possible, or would the province join in terms of talking to the federal government about maybe not sending the tankers out in terrible weather, or when terrible weather is predicted? So that's what this is, and I wonder if others have comments or ideas, or appreciate the letter, or would like it changed, or should we send it?
Councillor Gray.
Councillor Shukin.
Thank you. I think the letter is well done. And again, great to have followed this debate, as complicated as it can be from time to time, especially reading Trans Mountain's small text in terms of their research that they've done. The only comment I would make on the letter is the third final paragraph that reads, as a consequence of this situation, we ask the province to seek agreement of Transport Canada that tankers not enter our nearby oceans when such conditions exist or are predicted during their time of transit. Now, I know I'm going to offend somebody, but I'm wondering, I just throw this out, I'm not, text can be, adapted and moved around and whatever, but I feel like there's a better ask there, or maybe a more, something that might actually, so what the current paragraph is actually calling is basically, it's sort of an all or none thing. It's like when the wind is this high, tankers don't enter. I suspect that's not going to be, unless there's like clear mechanisms for that to be, for the entry into the Salish Sea to be halted, I doubt it will be. But the thing that I was wondering about is asking if they can share their plan to manage the risks when such conditions arise, or to I don't know, to develop a plan, or like pose a question as opposed to sort of a draw a line in the sand that's easily stopped over. I mean, you might even incorporate the two, but or word it a little differently, but again, just pose it as a challenge to them that's actually achievable and reasonable. Show us, we know this is a situation that's going to be problematic in terms of oil spill cleanup. What's your plan to deal with the risk?
I like that. I might be added rather than subtract.
Yeah.
The issue that we've got, well, I guess you can see it in the letter. It's once they're out there, if there's a problem in a storm, then we could be like day after day after day waiting, and the oil just comes ashore. It's not.
Yeah.
We're kind of worried too. Miask is talking with Fire Chief Dunlop and Shannon First Nation about once the oil hits or the bitumen hits the shore, what do we do? And how might we actually manage this poisonous substance all over the shoreline? It's quite problematic because you can't breathe the fumes, or that leads to big problems. So it would be a terrible disaster. But I get your point about asking what ideas do they have?
Yeah. And again, I think the main point is not to throw something that they can just say, challenge and question that it's too reasonable to ignore. So.
Yeah. Thank you. Mayor Little.
Yeah, I agree. That paragraph gave me some cause for pause as well. I just think that we are at risk of them dismissing the whole letter based on that one, and I think we're creeping into other jurisdictional boundaries, and I doubt whether they have the capacity or the appetite or the funding to monitor that, and I just think that they would dismiss us. So I would not be in favor of that paragraph, but something more aligns with what Councillor Shukin had said. And then also the part at the end, for your interest, we're actively planning. This is a letter from council. We're not meeting with WCMRC, the MIAS group is, but I'd like to suggest that we ask the WCMRC to come back to council in a month or two and present to council, and then we can actually say we have met with them. I think that would be a good idea.
Thank you.
Oh, and sorry, a third thing. Rather than in the fifth paragraph, fourth paragraph, where it says that any oil spill cleanup will be impossible, I would say difficult. We don't know whether it will be absolutely impossible. I would say it's extremely difficult, but can we say it's impossible?
Yes, we can. What we're saying is that the Transport Canada does not allow for the response ships to go out when the wind speed is greater than 28 kilometers per hour. And so we can say it's impossible as long as that's going on. So on a perfectly nice day, which we had the other day, you wouldn't even know the wind is blowing. And when we had our MIAS meeting, you can't get it. They weren't permitted to go out. So it's basically 40% of the time you just can't go out. So it's not possible.
Okay.
I mean, the reason why the letter says what it does about the tankers as well, the other paragraph, is that that's actually our interest, is to say, look, folks, are you not recognizing that we can't get out on the water? You have Transport Canada on one side, and you have, the WCMRC, which is an organization which is meant to be out there to try and deal with it. And the problem so far, their Environmental Assessment Office is saying, well, we haven't picked up that, we're just not aware of that yet. So we're trying to let them be aware of the situation that seems to be blind to it. But that's why we're bothering to write back, or why Miask was saying, hey, let's write back. This is kind of strange. We're in big trouble if a tanker has problems out there. One view on the committee is that if a tanker has trouble and it washes ashore, then we just evacuate the community. The fumes are that bad. So we're trying to get across this message about the problems. But if we want to soften it and say, well, not so much, we're okay with it. This is more because we were asked to be involved. We've responded, and they said it's not part of our. We're not going to look at it too much. We're just trying to go up a little bit higher in the organization to the minister and say, Minister, I know it's part of your mandate in here somehow to get a look at this. Can you talk to your people about it? And it's not so much that the province would be monitoring, it's more the province would say, hey, we do have a problem here. This is not, by the way, counter to the provincial policy either. The province has taken the stand to use everything in their toolbox to change this situation. So it seems to me it would be okay to ask them to have a word with Transport Canada, see what can be done. But I'm at your service.
Yeah, I'm good with including the paragraph. I mean, it's I do think the addition that I mentioned, again, more carefully worded, might provoke some.
I'd work with you on it a little bit if I might.
Well, yeah, for sure. But
okay. Mayor Little, are you okay if we leave this paragraph in as a consequence of the situation?
Sure. If as long as you understand the risk that it might be dismissed based on that, and I'm just worried that it might come across in the wrong way. But no, if that's okay, if you want to include that, that'd be fine. Maybe as a consequence of this situation, as a concept, it's not really a situation. It's more like realities or I'm not sure, but it's not really a situation.
Gotcha.
It's plural.
Okay, thank you. Okay, well, thanks very much for those comments, and we'll put something together and we'll correct that. And Miask meeting with WCMRC, and thanks, Councillor Shukin, for agreeing to help me draft that new paragraph there too, to add in. Thanks so much. Thanks, everybody.
And we're also going to ask WCMRC to come back to this committee or council for...
Certainly. I think we're scheduling now to meet WCMRC in June. Is it, if I could ask you yes.
That's with Miask.
Correct.
Yeah. So then after that, we'll invite them to come back to here.
That's
Michael
right.
Lowry.
Certainly. And it's also representatives of Miask. It's not the entire committee. And I hope we'll have something good to report after we meet with WCMRC. So the next item I had on the agenda was simply one about some work that's going on, or we understand may be coming up at CRD, or if it does, I expect it will come up at some point. In October of 2021, the provincial government set a target that distances traveled in light-duty vehicles would be reduced by 25% by 2030 compared to 2020. Now, this isn't a big item for Metchosin per se, because a lot of our people will be traveling by vehicles from homes into town. But it is an issue when we have a vote at the CRD about what's going on there. And the idea is that, or I would hope that we might, I just want to raise it as a topic when it comes up at the CRD, that we be supportive of the CRD doing what it can to meet the province's targets. The kind of thing that I would see happening, it was not just the other day that the Blink rapid bus system was put in place, and that's taking people from the western communities to town as fast as you can go currently. Likely what will happen next in terms of that, in terms of proposals, would be that there be an additional lane all the way in from the western communities all the way to town, not just intermittent extra lane. And when that happens, things will be much more uptake in terms of travel to town by transit. And furthermore, just expanding the bus fleet so there are more trips that can be made. At any rate, I was just looking for the Environment Committee to say, yeah, that seems like a good idea. We'd support that target at the CRD level. Councillor Shukin.
Okay, so are light duty vehicles where the focus of the target is?
Yeah.
Are there buses as well?
I know, light duty vehicles.
Light duty vehicles.
So we're getting people out of their vehicles onto a bus potentially, heading into town.
Oh, I see. Okay, great. Thank you. Okay.
And it's a provincial target, so it's just they're driving ahead, trying to get us to do things. And,
Yeah.
and I'm saying, hey, let's agree with that.
Okay. Light duty vehicles, as in cars. Thank you.
Yep. I might just add to say that, of course, when the mayor or each of us attend a CRD meeting or whatever, we go with an open mind. It's just the idea that if we provide some support offering to each of us when the issues come up, that it's fair enough to say, well, that's what we're thinking at the moment, until you get to the meeting and find out something new or different that might change your mind. I don't know if we need a motion for this or if it's just fine to go ahead if we're okay, if people are generally okay. It was more to bring the issue up so people knew about it. Fair enough? Great. So I forgot to mention that this is Earth Week. And that's kind of it's both, is it Volunteer Day and Earth Week? I'm not sure.
Volunteer Week.
Volunteer Week and Earth Week. And Earth Day is Saturday coming up. Well, May is Invasive Species Action Month, declared by the province of British Columbia. And having learned about that through the CRISP, the invasive species group that I'm sitting on for council, I got an email telling us about these various activities that we could take on this month. To talk about pet owners, don't bring your rabbits out to Metchosin. The following week is about gardeners and the kind of things that you have in your garden and whether or not some of those non-native plants could be removed, etc. And I wondered if Environment Committee would be open to asking staff to post some of these materials from the toolkit on our website, and we can also, there's also some template press releases we could put out. One I was really interested in, number one, the first week was about rabbits. But if people are okay with following through with this, we'd like to do that.
Yeah, I enjoyed reading this. I was curious as to what you were actually asking, if you're asking for all of this people on the website, or if you might actually, for week 1, 2, and 3, yourself pull something, as the chair, pull something else specific to Metchosin for those weeks, because I think that, especially with the rabbits, we do need the broader community. We need a media, like, please don't drop your rabbits here, right? Yeah.
Yeah. That's what I was hoping to do. And so I've talked to staff and they're open to doing it in terms of putting things together. And as I say, because we have the templates, it's relatively straightforward.
So this is in line with Earth Day, correct? Okay, because in the past we've had volunteers doing broom blitzes. That's been a really common one when Councillor Milne was here with us. Another one that I know Kathy Atherton has done for years in July when the tansy ragwort is in full bloom. That council and the community have rallied around to pull the dastardly weed away and deal with it. But I was wondering if we were doing anything specific to Earth Day. I know there's a few of us gathering in conjunction with some of the Langford councillors to do some earthy stuff in Willing Park, which is right on our border as well. So this is good to see that we're doing something too.
Yeah, I hadn't I'm just learning, of course, about the different events that are going on, but a broom blitz and a Tansy Rag work blitz sound like good ideas. I'll talk to Kathy and about the Tansy Rag work. And do you recall who organized the broom blitz offhand?
I believe that it was probably Councillor
does?
Milne and McKinnon were doing that. I don't know who headed it up. I
Yeah.
just remember hearing the reports all the time.
Good idea. Oh, there's a hand waving over there.
Yeah, we did the room bashing with Councillor Milne.
Right.
Wasn't there a contest one year?
We've tried lots of different
Okay.
strategies, yeah. So, yeah, people just pull their broom and bring it here and
Yeah, the mayor's just reminding me we can't hear you because you're not at the microphone. But could I just repeat?
Sure. Please.
Fire Chief Dunlop has explained that the fire department's been involved in broom bashes in the past, and Morley Milne, I guess, has started it out. So we'll let's look forward. I'll talk to Fire Chief and we'll see what we can do a little bit later. This came to me particularly from the the central command, I guess, of the CRD around invasive species, and I just thought it was kind of a fun idea and was applicable to us. So sort of why not?
Yeah. If Councillor Gray, if you don't mind, I will just mention really quickly that we are going to be involved at an event at Willing Park with our colleagues from Langford Council, and they've welcomed us to be part of a tree planting. I think there's 2 sets of tree planting and then invasive species removal. And the interesting thing about Willing Park is Bilston Creek, thank you very much, runs through Willing Park. So we thought it was a great opportunity to partner up with our great council colleagues in Langford, do something for Bilston Creek as well. So there we go.
Super, thanks for that. And 2 to 4, I think.
10 to 1, I believe, and then we have another.
That's right, we changed the time. That's right. Okay, 10 to 1. Thank you.
That's
Okay.
Thank you.
Saturday, right?
Saturday,
Yes.
exactly.
Okay, great. The other thing that I was, Councillor Shuck and I talked just briefly beforehand to mention to people kind of a report back from the AVIC, that's the Association of Vancouver Island and Coastal Communities meetings that happened last weekend. And do you want me to proceed, Councillor Shukin, or would you like to dig in?
Yeah.
Well, there were 2 resolutions that went forward. One was on old growth forest and the other was on anchorages. And maybe I'll mention the anchorage one first, and then you could give us a play-by-play on the forest one. So the anchorages one, that was to reduce anchorages in our area. I don't have the resolution directly in front of me, but the notion went forward. It was well supported and was packaged with a number of resolutions together, and the whole block was voted on and approved. And we had support from, I know particularly from North Cowichan and from the Islands Trust, but I assume there were others as well, the executive committee who were supporting it. So that was great news. And just another word of thanks to Alison Leduc, who worked so hard on it, and me Ask, and then Bev Bacon, who brought the issue forward. But to Alison particularly, thank you for all your work on that. And thanks to Councillor Shukin for bringing it forward there. The old growth resolution was a bit more complicated.
Yeah, and I also want to pass on thanks to Alison for helping me craft a statement that I was to read on the anchorages. And again, as I learn more and more about the issue, you realize there's a change that's needed there as well. Interestingly, there was an official from the Chamber of Shipping there who did reach out, or said she was going to reach out. I'll follow up with her. So the old growth issue came up on Saturday during the second round of resolutions, and I calmly walked to the mic and said, "Madam Chair, I wish to make an amendment to the amendment." And it's like, what? Anyways, there was the resolution committee had proposed an amendment to our resolution, which the simple action of the resolution, I wish I could figure out what the final action statement is. There a word for that? Like, be it resolved that. Anyways, the final action was really a simple one, and it was essentially that we call on the provincial government to halt all logging of old growth forests immediately, essentially. So it was pretty firm, pretty specific, and pretty direct. And so the amendment was basically that the committee was asking that the provincial government work with local communities as the old growth review implementation got underway. So the amendment I made was local communities and First Nations. So that went ahead. But what we found is there were, I don't know, 7 or 8 speakers collectively, and so it was one of the more debated resolutions of the convention. But yeah, there were a number of con speakers, and they tended to be, as you might expect, from resource-based communities. So some were pointing out the impacts that this might have with community forests and the local revenue that they might lose. There were 2 representatives from Indigenous communities who spoke against the halt to logging, and they did so in quite forceful terms. And yeah, there was something. Very much you had to listen and respect the where they were coming from in terms of their communities and what logging meant to them. But it was interesting once they began to articulate that. I think they took away a lot of support that I think the resolution had with me. And people were not so much shying away from it, but rethinking about some of the implications of it. So at the end of the day, what passed was the commitment to work with local governments and First Nations while the implementation of the old growth review was underway. So there we go. It was an interesting experience.
Well, and a good result too, in fact. Mayor Little.
Yeah, I just want to say that Councillor Shukin is being a bit modest. He actually performed exceedingly well for council. Councillor Donaldson and I were waiting in the wings to support him, but it was really nice to see other communities throughout BC stand up and speak to this. I think there was a little bit of misinformation on the people that were there was at least one speaker in terms of quoting facts about the old growth forest and the biodiversity and equating that to second growth forests. So that was unfortunate, and actually I would say that it was the most hotly debated resolution was Resolution 15. And then the 3 of us were charged for the debate for the next day, which was Resolution 30, which was the anchorage, and then they passed it as a block. So the 3 of us it was a bit anticlimactic, I gotta say. But anyways, congratulations to Councillor Shukin, and thank you to Councillor Donaldson for also supporting this as well. It was well done.
We will know better next year.
Mm-hmm. Well, actually, not even next year. UBCM is coming up in September.
Well, thanks all. It's nice to hear this story. Thanks for sharing tonight. So just a last mention, and really it's all on the same theme, but this is Earth Week, and there's an event this Wednesday at 7 p.m. at St. Mary's Church in Kairos, BC, are putting on something, and it sort of fits with our theme, what does an old growth ecosystem have to do with us? And Dr. Andy McKinnon will be speaking, and TJ Watt, both Metchosin folks, so it'll be kind of fun. Andy will be talking about old growth ecosystems, and TJ Watt will be talking about his photographs and some other aspects of saving old growth trees in British Columbia. So I think it'll be a fun evening. All are welcome. That wraps up my update. Are there any questions or other things that people would like to touch on? Okay with that. In terms of the remaining part of the agenda, I think just a motion to adjourn would be in order. Councillor Donaldson, thank you. And Councillor Epp, thank you. So all in favor? Carried. Thanks so much. Thanks everybody for being here.